Today, we're going to look at what happens when a whole generation decides it's time for a change and actually makes it happen. We're talking about Manipur and a story of how a clash between tradition and modern dreams completely reshaped its politics. So, that brings up a big question, right? How does a political system really change? Is it a big bang, a sudden revolution, or is it more of a slow burn? To figure that out, we're diving deep into the recent history of Manipur, because it's a perfect case study of all the forces at play when a society decides its future has to look different from its past. Okay, so to really get what a big deal this change was, we need to hop in a time machine. Let's paint a picture of what the political world in Manipur looked like before all of this started to kick off. At the very core of Manipur's traditional way of life was something called the Lalup system. Basically, it was a system where people had to provide labor for the state. Now, even though the system itself is long gone, its ghost kind of hung around, you know? It created a political culture that was all about duty to the state and a very clear top-down social order. So you can picture this whole pre-transition system like a big old pyramid. At the very top, you had the traditional elites holding all the power. Politically, everything was focused on conservatism, on keeping things the way they were, and on ethnic identity. If you wanted your voice heard, you went through community elders. And the economy, it was all about agriculture, managed by the state. It was a system built for one thing, really: stability. But even the strongest walls can start to crack. So let's look at the things that started to push back against this old order, the little seeds of change that were beginning to sprout. This wasn't an overnight thing. It was more like, the ground shaking for a while before the real earthquake hits. On one hand, you had a younger generation that wanted more, economically speaking, and they were getting pretty frustrated with the lack of opportunities. And at the same exact time, people started demanding more of a direct say in their government. These two forces started to slam into each other, and you could really see the cracks forming. And man, this quote from one of the sources just nails the feeling at the time. It really gets at that growing split between the generations, this feeling that the old system just wasn't cutting it for the new, more connected generation. And that roar for change, well, it was about to get way too loud to ignore. All right, so what happens when all that pressure finally blows the lid off? This is where we get to the really critical moments and the key people who are right there in the middle of it all. Okay, check out this timeline. It really shows you how one thing led to another, like dominoes falling. It all kicks off with people's frustration boiling over into action. We're talking economic blockades that shut things down and sent a clear message. That forced the government's hand, leading to new laws like the Youth Empowerment Act. All that momentum